Hello, my name's Aidan Walker. I'm here with the three founders of FOOTPRINT Brighton, and I'm going to be asking them some questions about it. Tim Pine is an architect and exhibition designer of considerable reputation. Emily Day is an architect who's worked for some of the most influential practices in this country. And Sophie Law-Smith on my left has been in the construction business for quite a while. She's a communications expert and co-founder of Design Brighton. I should also let you know that they have actually asked me to help them with putting the FOOTPRINT conference together. And so my first question is to Tim. Tim, tell us about FOOTPRINT Brighton. What is it?
FOOTPRINT Brighton came about because I went for a meeting with Sophie once, and it was full of architects, and they were all talking about their concern about the carbon problem in the construction industry, which is 40%. And the fact that they were all just getting on an airplane to go down to South France for the annual property show, which I just thought was ridiculous. So I was walking home and I came past Hove Lawns, which is where we're siting the show. And I sent Sophie a picture of it and I said, we should be doing it here, not in the south of France. Sophie thought I was crazy. 6 months later on, I'm not sure that she's particularly changed her opinion. But the idea is that it's a property event. The property people love going away for a few days, having a few drinks, chatting to their mates. And that is an incredibly important part of the show. But then we were talking to some friends of ours, and they said, yes, but actually we all need to know about carbon. They were developers, and they said, the thing is that we don't really understand how to deal with the regulations that exist around what we do. And so we really could do with learning more about this. So we decided to ally it with a carbon conference. So it's a property event, and they can come here and learn about carbon, as well as having probably quite a nice time. And
given the general situation that we have, particularly with the live events, don't you think this is kind of a bit of a bold move, really? Is it somewhat scary?
Well, it's noticeable that we're the only people that are launching events at the moment. We're in a slightly different situation from most people because most exhibition halls are fairly ill-ventilated, and we're using Marquis on the seafront down here. So we've got a lot more hope of pulling it off, I think.
Okay, so what, you've got a whole line of Marquis on the lawns?
Yeah, it's rather beautiful. It's right on the seafront down here, and it looks straight out at the wind farm, which is rather poetic given the context.
Emily, as an architect, what is your feeling about carbon? Why does a property event have to focus on carbon in this way?
I think all of the conversation within the industry at the moment is pointing to the fact that we need to get to grips with this, particularly with what's happened with COVID. We've focused ourselves on one thing, and now in the waning period of COVID, we're now considering how we address carbon really seriously. And everybody needs to get together to do that. It's only through collaboration that we're going to be able to make the moves that we need to make. And that's what this event is set up to do, to enable people to have the conversations that they couldn't otherwise have in a really nice open atmosphere, where we've sort of set ourselves as a whole industry that brief to make that progress.
We're talking about achieving zero carbon, right?
It's a process. It's not something that anybody's going to be achieving overnight. Clearly we need to make changes to our regulatory environment in terms of planning law and building regulations, and also in terms of the way we think as an industry about what we want to achieve and what our clients want us to achieve. So there are no overnight solutions, but it's only by getting together that we can have the conversations that are necessary to make that progress happen.
Sophie, you're rooted in the Brighton business community and construction. You work for architects here in Brighton. What's it been like getting this whole thing going, dealing with the council, getting them to agree to have, you know, a massive row of marquees on Hove Lawns? And also, I mean, clearly it's a very good place, but why particularly would it be Brighton the choice?
I think Tim alluded to it earlier. It was slightly difficult getting permission, but Brighton was just such a natural choice for this. There's not many cities that boast an expanse of lawn as Brighton does, Brighton and Hove, and our hospitality industry and visitors economy is so ready to cater for a conference of this grandeur.
That reminds me, Tim, I mean, I don't think you have yet talked about the existing kind of landscape of property shows? Because typically the property industry goes to the south of France, doesn't it? Isn't that why the idea was?
Yeah, it does. It's kind of gone out of fashion now because it's 60,000 tonnes of carbon to get us down there. But I think what's very important about this show is the fact that it gives people the opportunity to meet people that have got their diaries open, people that it's very difficult to get on the phone. When they go away for 3 days and they hang out in bars and restaurants, all this kind of stuff, it's a really fertile place for people to have really good conversations. And that's why this works over a kind of one-day event somewhere in the middle of London. It's got a whole different ethos about it, which I think is important.
So you're combining the business aspect of the existing the shows and so forth that we've already got, plus this focus on carbon reduction.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the focus on carbon reduction is it only works in a national show. It's okay for us to bring over the expertise from Holland, which we are, in the scientific world, but when it comes to the regulatory world, which is really what everybody has to work with, it can only take place in the country that it's important to, that it's relevant to. So it wouldn't work anywhere else. So because down here we're going to have the planners coming down, the lawyers, the barristers and all the rest of it are going to be talking about the legal framework that everybody's working within. And that's what I think is very important.
What are your chances, do you think, of actually getting the law changed?
I think very high, actually. I think everybody wants this to move in the same direction, but the difficulty that exists at the moment is that there isn't a level playing field for people to have conversations in. Normally, planners and developers meet in a sort of semi-confrontational world, which is when they're putting in an application. And down here, there isn't going to be any of that at all. And they're going to be able to say, okay, so how are we going to manage this? Because guys, we've all got to make this work. And so I think we're providing them with a unique opportunity to do that.
How much fun are we going to have here as opposed to the south of France?
I'd like to think that anyone would have fun in Brighton. It's got an incredible eclectic mix of independent restaurants, incredible hotels, world-class hotels. And we're an hour from London. You know, we've got the connectivity and we've got the offering as well.
Those tents, Tim, they remind me of when you and I first worked together, launching 100% Design in Chelsea in whichever year it was.
Yes, we've known each other for a little while, haven't we, Aidan?
So tell us why. I mean, why does it have to be tents and what's the advantage?
Well, we were starting off from nothing. And I said, let's stick it in a Marquis in Chelsea because everybody has a brilliant time in a Marquis. So we did that. We stuck an enormous bar in it, which then became the design centre of London every year. And it just rocked. And I just thought we should do it again.
So you're just getting all the people that like a few glasses to come together and discuss carbon
exactly.
reduction.
I mean, in the middle of every single one of these marquees is an incredibly important bar because that's what the property industry does. It sits in bars and it has chats. Yeah. We've got a bit of an advantage over Chelsea here, which is that we've got a view out over the sea, which is lovely.
You've also got a lot more room, haven't you?
Yeah, a lot more room. It'll grow. This thing will grow over the years.
Yeah, I'm convinced of that.
And we've managed to get Marquis to come in and do all the food, which is rather posh. So I think it's just going to be, 100% designed by the seaside, really.
Let's hope better, you know, because the thing is that you're not just, and this is perhaps one for Emily, that you're not just dealing with designers, are we? You know, there's, to me it seems like there's a really important, really serious level of activity where you're engaging with professional groups that just don't come to a design show. You know?
There's a phenomenal cross-section of people already signed up to come. And that's all the way through from the local authority teams, regen teams, planning policy officers, all the way through the entire gamut of the design consultant roster, all of the people who work in the financing and the QSing side of things, the legals, all of the specialists on that side, and there's a very long list of those. The developers, the funders, the investors, the financial instrument makers that make this stuff happen. So it's across the board, and I think that bringing people together in this way is going to be really exciting. and that's part of getting people to buy into to the change that's necessary.
Get that, absolutely.
The other thing that we're doing on the last day of the show is we're throwing it open to the local school children. Because I don't know about you, but I found it incredibly difficult to work out what I was going to do for a living when I was a kid, which is probably why I became an exhibition designer. And there are lots and lots of people in this show who are basically at the sharp end of the environmental engineering world. And they find it difficult to meet clever school kids as well. And so what we're doing is we're saying on the last day, going to meet people who might possibly become your future employer or your future employee. I think that will then develop this area into becoming a hub of environmental engineering, which will be really good for Brighton.
So how are you going to give it legs, make it last, make it go, keep going?
Change it every year. That's the key to these sorts of events. You never keep them the same. The problem is lots of people think, oh, I've got a very successful event here. I'm going to keep it the same. You don't do that. You change everything the next year. Reinvent. That's the secret.
Okay. Well, our whole point is to develop and progress policy, both from a legal perspective and also from what the developers and companies want to do with their ESG policies. If we were to stand still, we'd be left behind by that process that's happening anyway. So we won't be doing that.
Great. Well, I've got to tell you guys, I'm delighted that you've asked me to get involved. So it just remains for me to remind everybody, Footprint Brighton on Hove Lawns, be there, and thank you very much to Tim Pine, Emily Day and Sophie Law-Smith.